Alright guys, we're back in my garage, and in this video I'm going to show you a DIY on how to install an OEM Plus style big brake kit. So what we're going to be doing is fitting the brakes from an M3 and M4 onto your 1, 2, 3, or 4 series. And the process is actually pretty simple, and the concept behind it is the same as what we talked about in my last video. So if you're curious what brakes you have or what make the different brake setups different, definitely check out this video that I posted, and that will explain everything that you need to know as far as what the different brakes do. So in this setup, we're basically just going to be taking your stock 4-piston Brembo calipers and spacing them out in the front to fit the 380mm F80 and F82 rotor. And then in the rear, you can also space out your 2-piston Brembo from your 345mm setup to the larger 370 setup that comes on the M3 and M4. Now these adapters are what actually make all of this possible. So you can see this is an example of what you can get on your front brakes. And basically if you have a 340mm setup, this bracket will space out your caliper to fit the larger rotors. And so you can see it comes with the bracket itself, all the hardware you need, and it also comes with these bushings that will replace the bushings in your stock calipers. And I'll show you guys how to install it, and that way you can actually fit the larger 380mm rotors. Now if you have the 370mm brakes like the track package or the M Performance kit, yours will be much more simple. You're just going to put this eccentric bushing in your caliper, again replacing the bushings that came on your car, and that will give you just the little bit of extra room that you need to fit the larger 380mm rotor. So you'll press these in, align the eccentric bushing so that it's actually pushing it out from the center of the hub, and then you can fit a larger rotor. Now keep in mind I am selling these adapters, so if this is a kit that you're interested in, definitely send me an email and I can get you set up based on whatever brakes your car comes with. But there are a lot of great opportunities here to basically increase the size of your brakes for a much cheaper cost than it would be to replace the whole hub or buy all new calipers. This way you can reuse your existing calipers and just space them out to fit the larger rotors. So if you buy from me, you'll get the appropriate brackets for your car, and all you'll need to do is buy the M3 and M4 style rotors as well as the set screws. All the part numbers are in the description if you're curious what parts you'll need, and then this whole conversion kit will be installed just like OEM. Also, I know some people have asked me if this will also work with the 400mm style compact brakes. Honestly, I can't really confirm that because I haven't tried it myself, but if you're a baller and you have the compact brake calipers waiting, just burning a hole in your pocket, then definitely hit me up and we can be the guinea pig to see if that works. Anyway, so this is the old busted rotors that I took off of my car. You can see how they look on the side. So they're pretty small rotors, and also in here it's not really designed for efficiency. The cooling works, it's okay, but it's not fully optimized. And on the F80 rotors, you can actually see that it has directional vanes inside of the rotors so that it can basically have better cooling, because when the rotor turns and you're driving down the road, it's literally sucking air in through those vanes and pushing it out of the rotor, which is effectively pulling heat out of the rotor and just making the car much more efficient, making your brakes really reliable and consistent when you're really pushing them to the limits. So of course it looks better, but it also has a better capacity for absorbing heat, and that'll prevent brake fade and give you a lot of other benefits. Now these 340mm rotors are 20 pounds. I just measured them myself, and that's actually a little bit lighter than the M3 and M4 rotors. But keep in mind, more weight and more mass also means more thermal capacity. So again, that allows the brakes to absorb more heat and give you more consistent braking without running into brake fade or, any kind of issue where your brake performance could drop off significantly. So yeah, what we're going to do is go hop over and take off my wheels, and I'll show you guys how to install this kit. All right guys, so I've taken my wheels off, and these are my brakes. And you can see they're beaten pretty bad. I've been doing a lot of high-speed runs and back road drives and things like that, so that's why the rotors look so beat up. But actually, everything still looks like it has life. You can see the brake pads themselves still have some life. And I actually measured the thickness of the rotor, and that's actually well within spec as well. So I really could get more life out of these brakes, but I'm just doing this upgrade because I want to. So yeah, the car only has 23,000 miles, so I wouldn't expect the brakes to be completely worn anyway. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I've turned the brakes a little bit just so that it's easier to see what we're working with, but at this point, you're basically just going to do a brake service. And I know a lot of you guys have done this already, and there are already plenty of DIYs out there, so I'll try not to be too repetitive with this part. But the first thing we want to do is remove these brake pads. And so I have this little punch tool that I'm going to put in this hole, and then you hit it with a hammer, and it'll literally knock the pin out. And then there's another one down here, so we'll do the same thing at the bottom. Push that pin out, and then the brake pads literally just slide out this way from the calipers. Now it does have this clip right here. That's the anti-rattle clip to kind of help prevent it from rattling. Sometimes it kind of gets jammed in there really good, but you can pull all of it out at the same time, so you don't have to fight too much with trying to pull this out separately. When you pull out the brake pads, it'll come with them. So here are the pins, and then you've got the anti-rattle clip removed, and then the brake pad just slides out. Now on the left hand side of the car, you're going to have this actual brake pad wear sensor. So that's what you see down here, and this just kind of slides out of the brake pad. So what we're going to do is pull this pad all the way out, and then we're going to disconnect this brake pad sensor by pulling it out of the brake pad. Like I said, you just pull it straight up. Now next we're going to remove the actual caliper, and to get that off, we're going to remove these two 18mm bolts. So there's one right here, and then down at the bottom there is another one right here. So those two bolts at the top and the bottom of the caliper, you'll back that off, and then you'll fully remove the caliper from the rotor. So here I have the caliper removed, and I just have it sitting on this box that I had laying around. So just find something to either hang it here, tie it up, do whatever you need to do so that it's not just dangling by the brake line that it's tied to. Otherwise you could potentially damage it. And now we're going to go ahead and remove this rotor, and it's very simple. This is just a 6mm nut right here. So you're going to turn that loose, and then the rotor will come off. If your car is rear-wheel drive like mine, you'll see, obviously the rotor just turns with it. So just use both hands, take your time. It shouldn't be on there super tight, so you should be able to remove it just by holding the rotor in place. All right, so now the rotor's off, the caliper's off, and we've got basically everything ready to install the adapters. We have these bushings that are going to replace the bushings on the caliper. So you can see down there, those bushings that are threaded are going to be removed. We can do it pretty easily. It's just a little bit tedious. And that way we can use this upgraded hardware that comes with the kit to properly, again, space out and align everything to work with the larger rotors. All right, so here's what it looks like with the bushing removed. It's basically just a blank hole. That's the original bushing, and this is the bushing that came out. And the process is really, really simple. So all we're going to do is just kind of put a long screw that's the same thread pattern as, the caliper. So this one is an M12 by 1.5. I just had a long bolt in my drawer, so I use that one. If you don't have one, you can go to your hardware store and find one. And then you're going to use a socket to kind of be like the negative force. So when you screw this in, you put this socket here and you just tighten down on it. And as you tighten it down, the bushing is going to slide out. So this is a 32mm socket. This is the one that I use for my oil filter housing. So if anybody has this, then you basically have everything you need. So you get a long bolt, get your socket, put that on top of there and screw it into the bushing, and then keep tightening it down and it'll back out. Now it does get a little bit tough as things start getting tight. So you can do two things. One is, of course, just use a breaker bar, and that'll give you the extra leverage you need to just turn it easily and just kind of take your time, and slowly it'll come out. That's what I did on the other side when I replaced the first set of brakes. On this side, just to make it a little faster, I used an impact wrench, and it took like 10 seconds. So do that on both sides. And then what we're going to do is install this new bushing that came with the kit. And so again, it's the same thing. You just kind of put it in place, put your screw on the other side of it, and just tighten it down. And as you tighten it, it's going to suck this bushing in until it's all the way seated. You can also spray a little bit of WD-40 in here just to make that process a little bit simpler. So go ahead and do both sides, replace both bushings, and then we're ready to reinstall everything. All right, so now the rotor's in place. I just kind of put my lug bolts on here to help hold it up since I'm working by myself. And now we are going to install this set screw. And this is the only other thing that you need to buy. So you're going to buy the F80 rotors, and you also need to buy the F80 set screws. And you can see against the stock one is just a little bit too short if you line them up. So the threads stick out a little bit more on the F80 one, and that's what will allow it to actually hold it onto the hub properly. All right, so we got the set screw on, and now we are going to get ready to reinstall the caliper. So the first thing we're going to do is push these pistons in. You can do this by hand, just by pushing in on it, but when you squeeze one side, sometimes the other side pushes out a little. So just take your time, use both hands, push one side all the way in, then push the other side all the way in. And then if you keep going back and forth, eventually you'll be able to get both of them completely flat. There is a tool that you can push in here and it'll open up and push them all in at the same time, but it's a little bit expensive and probably not really necessary. I just push them in by hand and then I'm ready for the next step. All right, so now we have the pistons pressed in and we're ready to actually install this bracket. And this part is pretty simple. So obviously these holes that are chamfered go with these screws, and this is going to go into the actual caliper. So you'll put the bracket on this part, and then the screw will come in from this side and screw into that bushing that you pressed into the caliper. And then on the other side, you're going to use this bolt, push it through a washer, and then it's going to go through this hole on the back of the hub, and then the bracket will be on this side, and that will actually thread into this hole on the bracket. So that's basically it. What I'm going to do is actually put it on the caliper first, just because that part is a little bit easier to do with it removed from the hub. And then I'll line up the caliper with the bracket underneath here and then push this bolt through and just thread that on pretty easily. And just for reference, this is a 16mm bolt, and this requires an 8mm Allen key. All right, so at this point you can just kind of check your work, look at it from this angle and just make sure it's centered inside the caliper. Make sure you have a little bit of space here. The rotor should not be touching the caliper anywhere. And you can even spin it, just make sure it spins freely. You don't hear any rubbing or anything. And then we're ready to go ahead and install some new pads. So these are the brakes that I went with. Again, guys, I've talked about this before, but just going to a big brake kit does not give you the huge improvement in braking that you might think. You really need to upgrade your pads. This is where 90% of your braking performance comes from. So getting a pad with a really good aggressive braking material is what will give you the biggest improvement. So these are the ones that I got. They look pretty good, and they're on FCP Euro, so lifetime free replacements for me. What I'm going to do is use this brake grease that I've got from other pads I had, put that on the backing plate just to avoid any squeaking or unwanted noise. And then you're going to slide it in on each side of the rotor. All right, now we have the brake pads in. Of course, don't forget to reinstall your wear sensor. If you bought a new one, of course, you can install the new one. I'm just reusing mine because I'm cheap. And then we are going to reinstall these pins. So you're going to do this just like the reverse of removal. Push it through these holes. Then you're going to take the anti-rattle clip and kind of put that in its place for the first clip, and then line it up the rest of the way. And then what you're going to have to do is really push this down and line up the second clip. I'm going to need two hands for that, but you push the last pin through, and this just kind of helps put everything under tension so it holds it all in place. So there we go. We've got the clip installed. We pushed the pins in. I hit it with a mallet a couple times just to make sure it's all the way in, because it's going to get a little bit tight. So knock it in, have everything tight, make sure nothing's moving, and you're done. Now you have a real M3 brake setup. It's a nice 380 millimeter rotor upgrade, so obviously it looks much nicer, much bigger than stock, and the caliper and everything is located properly, so you won't have any issues with actual performance. So now that we've got everything installed, we're just going to follow the brake procedure. Make sure you take your time with that. You're going to have to pump your brakes a couple times the first go around to actually get the brake pads seated against the rotor, and then go out on the highway, get up to speed, and do a couple hard stops to really get them properly mated to your rotors. All right, so now we're back on the ground and we have my wheel reinstalled. I am running 18, so this is, further proof that it does fit under 18-inch wheels. And you can see how much room I have to the caliper, so plenty of clearance with these wheels. These are ET30, so yeah, lots of room on my setup. Now, on the rear, it's going to install very similar to the front. You're going to have an adapter bracket that kind of rotates the caliper a little bit so that you can get a little bit of room to install it. But it's going to be a little more difficult because you actually need to remove some material from the hub and from your caliper in order to create the clearance that you need. So just because there are so many control arms and things back there in your way, you're going to have to add clearance in these kind of highlighted areas in order for the kit to work. So you can grind that off either by taking it to a shop and having them do it, or of course you can do it yourself, but it's a little bit more significant of a process. You can just do the fronts or the rears or both. It really doesn't matter. It's up to you which ones you prefer. And remember, I am selling these brake kits. They are cheaper than the calipers that you'll find like on eBay and things like that. So send me a message if you're interested in doing this retrofit and I can get you all set up. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.